Primetime Seniors is brought to you by Home Helpers, committed to keeping you safe and independent at home.
Welcome to Primetime Seniors, living for today, making choices for tomorrow. I'm Allie McNair.
And I'm Debbie Morris, owner of Home Helpers.
We're coming to you from NAMI. Now, NAMI stands for National Alliance on Mental Illness. It's a grassroots self-help support advocacy organization for people with mental illness as well as their family and friends.
We'll be speaking to Ruth Halpin, one of the staff of NAMI. She's going to be talking to us about the organization and their upcoming NAMI Walk.
We'll also hear from Dale Planica again in this episode. This time he'll be talking about charitable contributions. Also, we'll meet with Dr. Howard Rankin, founder of the Rankin Center. He'll let us know about the latest techniques in assessment and treatment for Alzheimer's, dementia, and also mild cognitive impairment. And Dr. Jean Harris, LPGA professional, will show us some swing modifications and equipment changes that will help those with mild physical limitations get out there and play another 9 or 18 holes of golf.
So let's get things started here on Primetime Seniors. We're here at NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, with Ruth Halpin. And Ruth, I'm so glad to be here. I've been a board member for a number of years and have been active with NAMI for over 15 years. So I sometimes forget what people need to know. So let's start at the beginning. Who does NAMI help? Why is there a NAMI?
There's a NAMI because people have mental illness. There's a NAMI because we need to help with the stigma of mental illness. Mental illness affects 1 out of 5 families. Families that have schizophrenia, it's a brain disorder. Families that have bipolar, families that have depression, families that have borderline personality disorders. So these are an illness just like cancer is an illness, and we need to really address this illness.
And it's interesting because you're saying families have, and it's true. I think that like cancer, when somebody in your family's been diagnosed with a mental illness, it affects the whole family.
Yes.
So NAMI's vision and mission is to provide support, education, and advocacy for persons with mental illness and their loved ones. What does NAMI Beaufort County do to support these folks and their families?
Well, NAMI has many programs. To start with, we have Family to Family, and that's a 12-week class that's taught by people that have been taught how to teach the class. It's very educational for family members. We're going to be starting one in September in Bluffton. And so if anyone is interested in taking this class to be a better caregiver, to have more information, to communicate with your child or relative, to problem solve, you need to take this class. So please call the office and get more information.
And it's not just parents. It can be brothers, sisters,
yes,
daughters and sons too,
exactly.
Right? Okay. Okay. And then what about for the consumers, the individuals who are diagnosed with the mental illness? What kind of supports does NAMI offer to them?
NAMI offers a weekly and once a month program. The weekly program is at Bluffton, and it's from 6:30 to 8, and it meets at the Bluffton Oakity Outpatient Center, and it's on Wednesday nights. It's every Wednesday night, and it deals with trying to help people solve their life problems, and it's taught or directed by a person that belongs to NAMI that's been trained how to do a program. And we also have another one.
But it's not a doctor, it's another person with a mental illness.
Exactly. It's a person that has in recovery of mental illness, and they have been trained how to lead a group.
Great.
And so it's really like group think. And there's another one on the second Tuesday of every month, and this is at 5:30 at the Christ Lutheran Church off of 278.
Okay, so there are supports in place for family members as well as for consumers, members of the community with the mental illness. And there are support groups as well.
Yes.
Offered to both.
Yes, and there's a program for the family members or the relatives taking care of the person with mental illness, and that also meets at Christ Lutheran Church the second Tuesday every month in Hilton Head. And in Bluffton, it meets at a church in Bluffton, and I believe it's 10 o'clock on Wednesdays.
That's at Low Country Presbyterian Church, right on Simmonsville Road.
Yes.
Right. We also have a NAMI walk coming up October 16th at Caligny Beach. If you'd like to walk and show your support for the families in our community, we'd love to have you at the walk. Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you.
Thanks. stay with us here on Primetime Seniors. When we come back, Allie will be at the Rankin Center learning about the latest in assessment and treatment techniques for Alzheimer's.
Welcome back to Primetime Seniors. Brain research has exploded over the last decade, but what does that mean to all of us as we age? Here to talk about that is Dr. Howard Rankin of the Rankin Center. Dr. Rankin, what happens to our memory function as we get older?
Well, it begins to decline, and it does that for a variety of reasons. There are many different, actually 5 crucial types of memory that do different things. Declarative memory, which is remembering names, nouns, working memory. You know, you go into a room, you can't remember why you're there. Procedural memory, which is how to do things in sequence, and a couple of others. So you can be okay in one area of memory, but not so good in the other, and it tends to be the working and declarative memory that declines as we get older, and that is normal. I mean, aging isn't a disease. Yeah. You know, anyone over the age of 40 can look back and say, well, I'm not as sharp as I was a few years ago. That's not really the issue. The issue is, how significant is that, and does it betoken the beginning of something more serious?
So diagnostic testing, I would assume, what do we do in order to figure out? Is it normal aging? Is it
correct? Well, all of that is about comparing you against your age-related norms, okay? So whether we're doing psychological testing and we're testing visual memory or verbal memory, we're looking at how you compare against people of the same age. If you're, you know, in the average range, and we can say that, well, you're functioning about average for your age. The problems come when you're down in the, you know, the 5th percentile, the 6th, the low end. You say, well, now you're not performing as well as most of your peers. And it's not just psychological testing does that, imaging does that. Imaging looks at the brain, takes a photo of it, and can compare it again against peers.
Would that be an MRI, a CAT scan?
Yeah, specifically what I was thinking there is a tool called the NeuroQuant, which actually takes a picture of the hippocampus, which is the area of the brain responsible for recruiting memory, and compares that against norms. So, you know, it takes a picture of your hippocampus and says, you know, for the population you're about average, or you're high, or you're low. We do brain mapping here, which is a little different than taking a photo. It looks at neurological activity. And again, we compare that against norms for particular areas of the brain. Are you overstimulated? Are you understimulated? Certain areas of the brain we know are responsible for memory, what's going on there.
If someone has a diagnosis where they are below the norms or what's considered normal, are there treatments?
Of course, there are medications out there, and will continue to come to the market. Most of those really are designed to arrest memory impairment rather than improve it. And then you're really back to the lifestyle factors that are really crucial. One of the things that we've discovered, which is really most exciting in the last 10 years or so, is something called neurogenesis, which means the brain is continually producing new cells, particularly in the areas of memory and learning. The problem is a lot of those new cells die. And so the lifestyle issue is about how do you keep as many of those new cells alive as possible.
Talk about that then, lifestyle and how that can impact positively memory function.
Right. Well, you know, one of the key things that helps neurogenesis and keep those new cells alive is physical exercise and activity. You know, physical exercise is maybe the biggest thing that helps preserve new cell growth. So physical exercise is important. Good quality sleep is important. Diet is important. Hydration is important. Good quality blood supply to the brain, very important. Social activity, important. All of these things either have proven to be, or we expect ultimately research will show, enhance neurogenesis, keep those cells alive, and therefore preserve, at the very least, your memory and learning function.
So it's really important, I would think, if you get a diagnosis of a loved one or of yourself, to put those practices into place.
Absolutely. There are things that you can do, and the more energy you have and the more stimulated you are physically, socially, and intellectually too. Yeah. And that extends a bit more than just doing crossword puzzles. It's about a whole variety of new activities for your brain. If you keep that stimulation up, physically, psychologically, and intellectually and socially, that's the best you can do. And of course, one of the problems happens as people go into decline. They get depressed. Sometimes that depression is not treated. They withdraw, and then they end up in doing exactly what they should not be doing, which is becoming isolated and getting no stimulation whatsoever.
Well, you have given us some great information. And Dr. Howard Rankin of the Rankin Center, I want to thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Many of us struggle to cut calories from our daily diet. Here are 5 tips that might help.
Our Primetime Seniors tips are brought to you by Home Helpers, making life easier.
Don't drink your calories. Instead of apple juice, eat an apple. Instead of orange juice, eat an orange. Besides giving you something to chew on, the fiber will help fill you up. Rehydrate with water. Unless you're exercising most of the day, water is all you'll need to adequately restore your body's fluids. To add a little zing, flavor your water with a small amount of lemon or orange juice. Drink a glass of water when you're feeling hungry or tired. Feelings of fatigue and hunger often can mean your body's thirsty. A glass of water can boost your energy and eliminate those hunger pains. Eat regularly. If you allow yourself to get overly hungry, you'll fall into the seafood, eat food mode, grabbing whatever is in the fridge or cupboard. Small, frequent, and nutritious meals help to manage hunger and prevent overeating. Replace shortening with applesauce. When baking cakes, brownies, or muffins, replace oil with equal amounts of applesauce. It enhances flavor, locks in the moisture, and reduces the calories.
Coming up,
the donation needs to be to a qualified organization and not to an individual. So if you're giving money to the guy on the street corner, that's not going to be tax deductible.
Welcome back to Primetime Seniors. Charitable contributions are a line item on our tax returns. For many of us, it's a gray area, but here to help clear it all up for us so we do the right thing is Dale Planica of DMP Financial Services. Great to see you again, Dale.
Good to see you, Allie.
Well, let's start at the top. How do we figure out whether a charitable contribution is something that is a legitimate tax deduction on our tax return?
Well, first of all, Allie, you're going to need to be filing your tax return and itemizing your deductions, which means you're filing Schedule A with your tax return. Secondly, the donation needs to be to a qualified organization and not to an individual. So if you're giving money to the guy on the street corner, that's not going to be tax deductible.
And how do we know that we're working with a nonprofit that's a legit organization, not that it's not legit, but an organization where we can say, yes, this is a charity and this is tax deductible?
Well, the IRS actually gives designations to qualified charitable organizations, but pretty much they're what you think of as your church and so forth. But things that don't qualify would be things like a chamber of commerce, a political party. In those cases, those would not be tax deductible as a charitable donation. Giving to a chamber of commerce may be a business deduction, but it would not be a charitable donation.
Let's take a look at churches, because we do have a lot of churchgoers here in the Hilton Head area. If I am there week after week and the plate is passed and I'm giving a donation, what do I need to do in order to make that something that I can put on my tax return as a a charitable contribution? Well,
the best thing to do is to actually fill out the envelope and give a check, because you need to have documentation as a bank record, which would be a canceled check, or a receipt. And now a lot of churches now are giving receipts at the end of the year of all your donations for the year. Keep in mind that you also need an acknowledgement from the organization if your donation, if any one donation is over $250 during a tax year.
Now, a lot of organizations might do that in the form of a letter thanking you and stating the amount. Is that good enough?
That's correct. That'll qualify.
Well, recently I cleaned out my closet. It was a little scary, Dale, and dropped it off at a nonprofit organization. Can I just say, that was probably about $100, $200 worth of clothes and I'm all set. What is it I need to do?
Well, what you need to do is when you go to the organization to drop them off, you want to keep a list of all your items. You're going to need to determine the fair market value of those items, which may be a matter of going into the thrift store and looking at similar items to get an idea that shirts are $5 on the rack. So if I have 5 dress shirts, that's $25. But the organization, they'll give you a receipt that's pretty much a blanket receipt, but you need to fill in the amount and you need to attach a statement as to the items, what kind of items there were, and also the valuation that you've come up with.
For people that give of their time rather than cash, someone who is a professional or, say, a painter that might go and paint a home for Habitat for Humanity, is that time that they spend tax deductible? Can they figure out, well, I normally get 30 an hour, so I was there 10 hours, and deduct that amount? It's
a good question, and a lot of people volunteer here on the island. Unfortunately, that is not a tax deduction as a charitable contribution, the terms of the services that I'm speaking of. However, if that painter were to go to Lowe's and pick up brushes and tape and paint, that cost would be a tax deduction as a charitable donation. He also would be able to deduct his transportation costs. So he gets to deduct 14 cents a mile for going to and from the site, as well as any parking and tolls.
Oh, that's good to know. Now, we got a couple of emails for you, and I'm going to go ahead and fire away here. The first one's from Todd H. It says, regarding the statute of limitations, is it a good idea for me to amend a return?
Well, to answer the first part of the question, yes, the statute of limitations will start again as of when you file the amended return. So the IRS will have 3 years from that point to go back and examine your return. Is it a good idea to amend the return? Well, it all depends on what kind of value you think you might be getting back from the IRS versus what it's going to cost you to amend the return. You may have an accountant, hopefully have a good accountant, that will file the amended return for you, so that's going to cost you something. In addition, there's going to be a new pair of eyes that are going to look exclusively at that return, so you want to be careful to raise the white flags as opposed to red flags.
Right, and that new set of eyes is going to be a set of eyes at the IRS.
Right, exactly.
Okay, and we're going to take another one here for you. It's from Michelle C. It says, I noticed that there are the initials EA after your name. What does that mean?
Well, hopefully for all my clients it means excellent accountant. But in reality, EA stands for enrolled agent. And an enrolled agent is a classification that comes from the IRS directly. It's based on a battery of testing on the individual taxes, corporate taxes, partnership taxes, as well as a background check. And by virtue of passing those tests, I've been designated as an enrolled agent, and I can practice before the IRS on any tax matter.
Wow, well, congratulations on the EA after your name, because it sounds like it was a lot of work.
It was a lot of work. Thank you.
Dale Planica, I want to ask you one other question of my own. Do you play golf?
I do play golf.
Okay, you're going to find this next segment interesting. I went to the golf doctor who has some great tips for senior golfers. Take a look.
Hi, this is Dr. Jean Harris, LPGA Master Teaching Professional at Rose Hill Golf Club. And we're here today to help seniors with their golf swing and for them to do the best they can with their bodies.
Jean, what about going to a professional? What should I be aware of when I first meet that person?
I really think it should be like going to a doctor. I think you should ask a lot of questions. I personally interview my students. I find out a lot about you. I want to know what you did for a living, what other sports you might have played, and by all means, I need to know if there's any physical limitations that may affect your golf swing.
So if I say to you, gee, I played tennis in an earlier life, how does that help?
Well, I taught health and PE for 28 years, and I use a lot of analogies in my teaching, so I actually have a lot of what I call teaching aids or toys with me, and I might put a tennis racket in your hand and you might show me how you hit it down the line.
Okay, and if I say to you I was an engineer, an electrical engineer, how does that help?
Well, typically when I interview an engineer, it's very detailed, and if I ask him or her to flare their left foot out, they're going to ask me how many degrees, so it's very specific.
Well, those are really good points. Let's start with the golf club itself. You gave me this to hold on to. It's got a really nice feel. What is it about this that's important?
Well, first of all, I think, the basic fundamentals are grip, stance, and posture. And as we get older, we get a little tightness in our fingers, maybe a little arthritis kicking in. And I recommend softer wind-type grips. Wind's a company, but a couple of companies do softer, sort of squishy in your hands. And I would have the same grips on every one of my clubs. So I would go with a softer grip. If you have small hands, and a lot of women do, mine are really tiny, I don't want to build them up too much. If it's a guy that has bigger hands, then he can get a mid-size or larger grip, but I really recommend the soft, spongy type grips.
What about the golf stance itself? That's important.
Yeah, that's where we're actually going to come over here a minute, and I'm going to give you a broom.
Okay.
And I do a lot with non-golf related things because I think it's so important to have motor learning skills before you put a golf club in your hands. So one of the first things on posture, Allie and I are just going to take the broom and we're just going to stand tall. I'm going to just stand with our side. You can stand that way if you want.
Okay.
Okay, and we're just going to face each other, and I want 3 points of connection: the bottom of my spine, the top, and my head. Okay. And we're going to get our feet about shoulder width apart, and we're going to flare both feet out because it's much easier to turn that way, and we don't want to get too wide. So now you're just going to bow. Okay, and when you bow, you should see like a crease in your pants. And now I'm going to flex my knees. Yeah.
Can I tell you, I golf very little, but there's no way I'm standing the right way by doing this exercise, I can tell you.
Okay, now, I want you just to bring this broom back in front of you.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll move out of your way.
Okay.
Okay, so what we got right now is she's bowing from the hips, your booty's out, your knees are flexed, and I like you to feel your chest and chin up. Okay, one of the worst cues or tips people give you, they'll say, Allie, keep your head down. Well, now she's got this osteoporosis type setup and she can't turn her shoulders, so I want your chest and chin up.
Okay.
Okay, so that would be a great posture thing. And at first it feels funky and a little weird, but it would really help your game. So a narrower stance, feet flared out, and bowing at the hips, bending the knees, chest up, chin up. And if you're wearing bifocals, do the best you can, but don't look down. Okay, so I think those would be good, what I call pre-swing thoughts. So grip, we've talked about stance, a little narrower, a little flared out, and good posture.
What about using this broom for, say, another exercise you were showing me earlier? That's a good one.
Well, I'm going to show you a couple things over here real quick. Two basic problems, and this is it, whether people have got bad back, bad knees, arthritis, is they don't shift their weight well. So I'm going to get Allie in here, and these noodles are about shoulder width apart. And this is a lightly weighted ball. You can get these at a gym. And all she's going to do is turn and act like she's going to hand it to me, so sort of like a pass.
Okay. And I want to mention to people that we're going to have Dr. Jean Harris back again for another episode, because I know there are a lot of you out there that are senior golfers or maybe haven't taken a lesson yet. This might encourage you. Help me with this again.
Feet, hips here. There you go. Flare the feet out a little bit.
Yep.
And now all you're going to do is turn
to you.
Yeah, and just hand it to me.
Okay, ready?
Okay. Left knee,
I can
right
feel the
pocket.
weight shift.
Okay, your left knee and right pocket turn.
Okay.
Now we're going to come over here and you're going to hand it to me in this direction.
You ready?
Yep. Okay, and this time I want your back foot to release and see if he can see the bottom of your right shoe as you come through.
There we go.
Much better.
Now, we're out of time, Jean, but I want to, again, let people know you'll be back. And you know what? She was one of the top LPGA instructors named by Golf Digest in 2010. So we want to thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And we'll see you again.
Okay.
Thanks for watching this episode of Prime Time Seniors. As always, we want to thank our show participants, Dr. Rankin with the Rankin Center, and Dale Planica with DMP Financial Services.
A big thank you, too, to Dr. Jean Harris, LPGA Master Professional, the folks at NAMI, and my co-host, Debbie Morris, the Home Helpers. Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you, Allie.
And remember, seniors, live prime time.